Welcome to mission number 1, getting started with Godot. The first step is we are going to open up the Godot app. And it will open up a window where it will show us a list of projects. In this case, we don't have a list of projects, but this is where the list of projects will go to once we establish one. Right now, we don't have any projects, so we're not going to explore anything. We're going to press cancel, and we are going to make a new project. Press new project button, and we're going to name this project creating a project. Okay, this first part right here will create a folder. Godot requires you to create an empty folder so that you store all the assets and resources needed to create your program, or in this case, your game. Okay, right below is a project path, and this will tell you where you're going to be saving your Godot project. In this case, we're going to be saving it in the documents folder. I'm not going to be saving it in the documents folder, but there are two places where you can save it so that you can easily access it. One is the desktop, and the other one is the documents folder. So I'm going to browse, and I am going to browse for the desktop folder. So give me a second to get there. Find desktop and select this folder. And the next step is we're going to create a project folder so that we store all of our resources in that folder. So let's create a folder. And now we have here the project path. It's on the desktop. The create a project folder is on the desktop, and we can see it right here on the desktop as proof. The renderer that we'll be using is OpenGL ES 3.0. If you have a really old computer, this will do as well, but for most part, I think most of your computers will work on OpenGL ES 3.0 driver. So let's create and edit the created project. And so this here is your Godot interface. Let's go through some of the parts that we see. On the top left-hand corner of your screen, what we have here is our menu. Okay, and we have a scene, a project, debug, editor, and help. What we're going to be doing is we're going to be creating a scene in Godot. And the scene is kind of like a level or a room, and it's a type of node. And this is Godot uses a node system. And what a node is a foundation or components of your game. That your game is made up of many nodes. So we're going to create a node very shortly. Right below is your file system. This is where all of your assets and resources are stored. RES represents resources, and you can open up your resource folder, which is the same folder that you saved, in this case, on our desktop. This huge area in the middle is what we call our viewport, and this is where we can view what our game looks like. Right below is an area where you can see the outputs, where we can see the status if we debug something, audio, and animation. We'll get to those later on. On the top here, this is where we can access a 2D space, a 3D space, the scripts, and the asset library. On the right side right here, we have our inspector node and node doc. Sorry, inspector doc and node doc. And the inspector doc will give us access to different properties for each of the nodes. And the node doc will give us access to different functions or codes so we can program the node to do something. And on the top here is where we get to play our scene. Okay, we can play the whole scene or play a particular scene. Okay, and so that gives you a sense of where everything is at in Godot. Okay, so in this create a new project scene, we are going to click on 2D scene, and we will have developed our first node here. Let's rename the node. We can double click on the 2D node, node 2D node, and rename it my first scene. The second step is since this is what we call a root scene. The root scene is your foundational scene. It's the scene that controls all the children nodes, and children nodes are all the nodes that are connected to the root node. So we're going to make a child node, and what we're going to do is we're going to press the plus button where it says add child node, and we're going to type in the word button. Sorry, I'm going to type in the word sprite. We'll do the button later on. And what we see in this area is a sprite node. Press create. Okay. And when we click on the sprite node in the scene dock area, we can change its properties in the inspector dock. In this area where it says texture and this is empty, we are going to provide it a graphic or a sprite. A sprite is just a graphic. So where it says icon PNG in your file system area, we are going to drag icon PNG into where it says texture empty. And now the sprite becomes, you'll see the graphics of the sprite on your viewport. Okay, so the next step is we're going to make a button. Press the plus to add a child node, and we're going to type in button and select button and press create. And what we see here, if we zoom up, if I use my scroll button to zoom up, what we see here is a grayish box. I'm going to drag this one out, and we can control the size of this button by clicking on these handles and dragging out. And now we're adjusting the size of the button. Inside of this button, we're going to place a text in there. And to do that, make sure we've selected button, and in the inspector node area, okay, inspector dock area, we are going to type in click me. Okay. Now let's go back to the scene dock. What we see here is that the button is a child node of the sprite node, and the sprite node is the child node of the my first scene node. What that means is if I click on the sprite, whenever I place a code in sprite or if I move the sprite, the button will move with it. The sprite controls the button or the position of the button. Now, if my first scene was like a sprite node, it controls both the sprite and the button. And if you want that button to be the child of my first scene, well, we can drag the button to my first scene. Oops. Drag the button to my first scene, and now the button is part of my first scene, and the sprite is on my first scene. As you see, the button is not part of the sprite anymore. If I move the sprite does not control the click me button anymore. Okay, and that's what we want. Let's zoom out by scrolling the scroll button or your middle button out, or you can press Control dash to zoom out, which will work as well, so that we see the viewport. Okay. And it's kind of hard to see this, but what we see is a blue box right here. And that blue box represents the space where the game is going to happen. Okay, so let's place the click me button in the middle, and let's place the sprite right there. Okay, very similarly, the sprite will have these handles, and you can adjust the size of the sprite by clicking and pulling on the handles. So customize it to your liking. Alright, so now we have our scene intact, and now what we're going to be doing is we're going to be doing some coding. Let's click on the root scene, and we are going to press on the script button. All right, and so let's keep everything here the same. Everything is default, and we are going to press create. Okay, and now what it transitions us to is a script window in the viewport, and this is where we type in the instructions so that the button knows what to do and the sprite knows what to do. Before we do this, let's save our scene. Go to the scene button, a scene menu on the top right hand corner of your screen, and press save scene. And it's going to ask you to save your scene. For now, let's save our scene as my first scene. And then watch, it's going to save into your resource folder. Right here, the my first scene.tscn is your first scene. Okay. My first scene.gd is the script that you just made. Let's view the script area right here. Okay, where it says extend node 2D. What this script stands for is it will access a library of different codes that node 2D can use, or in this case, my first scene can use. All right, so we're going to be using a certain code, so that when we click on that button in my first scene, this sprite disappears. That's the goal. Okay, so the first step is we also have to recognize that we see some hashtags. Hashtags are comments. So if you put hashtag, any text afterward is a comment. It will not be calculated or operated on. It's just there so that you can type in what the codes actually mean. For now, I'm going to delete these comments or anything with a hashtag right here. Okay. And I'm going to delete func ready, and func ready or function ready is a part of the code where once your scene starts to play, everything within this function, and we'll study about functions later on, will play out its instructions. We don't want that to happen. So let's delete all that so that we are only left with extends node 2D. Okay, so let's go to our button. Okay, we want to code the button. To do that, we select the button node and go to the node doc. And what we want to do is we want to press on the node. So when we press on the button node, we want it to do something. We want it to hide the sprite. But to do that, we need to communicate the signal of this button to the scene that has the script. And in this case, my first scene has the script. Make sure we select my first scene and press connect. And what we see here is a signal. It's kind of like a wireless signal, but this is a signal that will signal a message to the script in my first scene. And as you see here, there's that signal right there. Func or function on button pressed. And this is another indication that something signaled something to this script. Okay, let's delete all these blank spaces here. inside of this script, we're going to be typing some instructions so that once you press the button, the sprite will disappear. Okay, so don't worry about what the script means. The whole purpose behind this tutorial is to make sure that you know the process of one, establishing a 2D node, and to create some child nodes such as a button and a sprite, and to send messages and to place a graphic on your sprite. So that's the objective of this tutorial. We will look at what these codes mean at a later time. So for now, copy what I copied down. So I'm going to use a $, sprite dot visible equals exclamation point $, sprite dot visible. Okay, and we want to make sure that this sprite, the name of this sprite, is the same as this sprite, the name of the sprite here. So that means we have to make sure that the cap matches. And so something to notice is if I press the $, and press S, it gives me already what the name of the sprite is, or what the name of the node is. So we can press enter and it types it in for us. That makes our life a little easier. And then we can say visible equals exclamation point. I'll type in S. I don't see sprite anywhere. P R. All right, and now we see the word sprite right there, so we can select that. Dot visible. There you go. And so we're only going to be typing one line of code within the on button press function. Okay, press file in the script area, press save to save the script, and let's save the scene. Right, I forgot one more thing. Put an exclamation mark as well. I'll put a $sign as well. And what that $sign does is it gives us access to the properties of the sprite. Realize that if we don't have that $sign, the color changes to a white text color, which means it will not have access to the properties of the sprite. If I put the $sign there, it turns green. And so it's really important to, if you want to have access to the properties of the sprites, or if any node, place a $sign, then type in the name of the node, and make sure the name of the node is cap sensitive as well. All right, let's play the scene and let's see what this code does. So I'm going to play play scene, or you can press F6 to do that. Okay, so if I press click me, the sprite disappears. If I press click me, the sprite reappears. And that's what this code does. Great, we are done with mission 1. Create my first project, or create a project. Let's close this game window. And let's do a final save, because now the next step is to get this program into your Google Drive so you can submit this program onto teamringo.org. Okay?